Most people think that clear boundaries, emotional maturity, or confidence will protect them from manipulation, but that's not the whole story. There are 3 ways people try to protect themselves, strategies that seem strong, but they still fail repeatedly. And there's one quality that would stop all of it before it even starts. I've spent the last 20 years researching self-worth and narcissistic relationships. As a coach, author, and survivor, I teach systems to help you spot danger and respond with power. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 false protections, why they backfire, and the one quality that actually makes you unmanipulatable. Whether you're searching on Reddit, reading a blog, trading memes on social media, one of the worst pieces of advice you get is you just need to set a boundary. It sounds great. It sounds reasonable, but that advice is actually dangerous. Most people think a boundary is something that you say, but they're actually confusing 3 different things. Sometimes they're speaking their truth. For example, that really hurt me. Or sometimes they're asking for what they want, saying something like, can you please not do that again? And sometimes they're telling the other person what to do with something like, I need you to stop texting me so much. And each of these might sound honest or clear, but they're not boundaries. They're all attempts to get the other person to change. And manipulators don't care about this. They work around these types of boundary attempts by pretending to agree, giving vague answers, and pushing the conversation off, acting offended, or escalating the situation. Therefore, the boundary that you tried to set gets negated, and this happens because you're still trying to preserve the connection. You're trying to be reasonable, considerate, or fair, but these instincts are the very traits they rely on to stay in control. We'll get to how to fix it, but first, there's a second mistake that keeps you exposed to manipulation without even realizing it. A lot of people think that if they just speak up, if they're direct, firm, and assertive, they can stop manipulation. They believe that calling it out or confronting it head on will shift the power. So they say something like, that's not okay, or I'm not going to let you treat me like that. And that might sound like strength, but actually it's showing them exactly where you're weakest. It's giving them access to what actually bothers you. And if someone's manipulative, the last thing you want to do is give them a clear map of what gets to you. You're exposing what matters to you. You're handing them the exact tools they need to provoke you or to derail the conversation or to flip the script. They actually benefit from this by learning exactly how to push your buttons, knowing exactly how to get a rise out of you. And they clock this as emotional ammunition to use later. You think you're confronting the problem, but you're really still just holding on to the belief that there's a way to work this out. That if you're strong enough or clear enough or direct enough, they'll finally respect you. But underneath it, you're still trying to restore some kind of harmony. You're still hoping that you can get back to something cooperative or something fair. And that hope is exactly what keeps you exposed. Before we get into the next false protection, if you've ever walked away from conversation feeling manipulated, powerless, or just plain confused, maybe you've been burned by someone you trusted and now you're questioning everything, I have something for you. My free narcissist protection checklist, it's your first step to safety and empowerment. So now let's get to the third and maybe the sneakiest false protection. A lot of people think that if they can stay grounded, self-aware, and emotionally regulated, they'll rise above the manipulation. They believe that if they can understand what's really going on with the other person, they're not going to get hooked. So they listen carefully and they look for root causes. They explain what might be happening to the other person's nervous system. They try to relate things back to childhood patterns. They start managing the conversation like a therapist. They'll say things like, I think what's happening is your attachment wounds are being triggered, or this might be a trauma response. You're not actually angry at me. Thinking, if I stay calm and help you understand your patterns, we can work through this. But none of it works. And believe me, I've done all these things. And I thought this was the right thing to do. I thought it was smart and intelligent and mature, but underneath was this belief that I could fix the power dynamic. I never could because this strategy always fails. Emotional intelligence can help you understand the pattern, but it doesn't change it. You're imagining that if you can see where they're coming from, childhood wounds, nervous system triggers, trauma responses, that they're going to meet you there. But manipulators aren't trying to solve the same problem. They're not looking for connection or healing. They're looking for leverage. And the more insight you offer, the more tools you're giving them to keep control. You might think that you're the strong one because you're really regulated, but really you're just easier to manage, and manipulators love that. While you're staying calm, they're gaining power. So how do we fix these problems? If these strategies keep backfiring, there's always one problem at the core: agreeableness. It's the tendency to prioritize social harmony, assume the best in others, and willingly compromise your own interests to keep the peace. Okay, let's pause, because isn't that a good thing? Only when it's a conscious choice. Any trait, when used correctly, is a strength. But when agreeableness is your default and you don't have another tool in your tool belt, it's dangerous. If you're face to face with a predator and you try to keep the peace or assume he means well or sacrifice yourself to smooth things over, that doesn't protect you. It just makes you an easy target. And that's why you need another tool: the trait of being willing to protect yourself, even if that means not being liked. It's called disagreeableness, and it might be the most important tool that you've never been allowed to have. It's the willingness to disrupt harmony, stay skeptical, and refuse to compromise your well-being just to keep others happy. Okay, pause again, because I hear you already. That doesn't really sound like a very nice person, does it? Yes, and that's the point. The point is for people to know that you have teeth and that you can bite. It doesn't mean you always bite. It just means you don't make yourself an easy target. Like I said before, any trait, when used correctly, is a strength. But when disagreeableness is your automatic mode and you can't access flexibility, warmth, or care, you just become bitter and ruthless. Taken to a pathological extreme, this trait becomes one of the core tenets of narcissism, and this is why we have to back up. If agreeableness has been your default, you've spent your life avoiding conflict, smoothing things over, or making yourself smaller just to be safe, you might not even realize that there's another tool you can turn to. Disagreeableness has to be in your toolbox. You have to be willing to use it on purpose and often. And that's how you stop giving away your power. So let's go back to that first mistake with boundaries. Saying things like, "That really hurt me. Can you please not do that again?" Or "I need you to stop texting me so much." But each of these has a hidden quality of agreeableness. They're still hoping to keep the peace by appealing or explaining or asking. Disagreeableness changes that outcome. So instead of softening your stance or asking someone to change, you act from that strong place. You don't explain something hurt you. You just walk away. You don't ask them to stop. You block them. You don't wait for them to care. You protect yourself anyway. Notice each one of these isn't about trying to get them to change their behavior. It's about you changing yours, taking action that's willing to disrupt harmony, that shows that you're a little bit skeptical of their intentions, and that refuses to compromise your well-being. That's what creates the boundary that cannot be crossed because you're the one in charge of it. So now let's look at what went wrong with assertiveness. Hoping to stop manipulation by saying things like, "That's not okay," or "I'm not going to let you treat me like that." Wait, because don't those kind of sound disagreeable? Not quite. They're still rooted in agreeableness because underneath, there's still this hope for resolution. They're trying to correct the behavior, restore fairness, or to get the other person to care. And that's what keeps you emotionally exposed. So try putting on the disagreeable lens onto that same situation. What if you're not actually safe here? What if they don't have good intentions? What if this is already harming your well-being? That one shift changes everything because instead of trying to correct them, you remove yourself. Instead of announcing the mistreatment, you stop engaging. Instead of warning them to stop, you make it impossible for them to continue. Assertiveness without disagreeableness is like trying to bite without teeth. It might look fierce, but it won't stop them from crossing the line. The same goes for emotional intelligence. It's ineffective without a backbone of disagreeableness. You don't regulate yourself to help them. You regulate yourself to see clearly so you can protect yourself when things turn. That means you don't explain their triggers. You just spot the danger in them. And instead of getting caught up in their wounds, you hold them responsible for their behavior. And instead of carrying the burden of their past, you refuse to let that become your job. A healthy dose of disagreeableness is what keeps emotional intelligence from becoming emotional labor. Thanks for watching. YouTube thinks you're going to like this video right here on the screen. Yep, that's the one. Click it to learn even more about narcissists, protecting yourself against manipulation, and living the life you deserve. Okay, I'll see you over there. Bye.